Serenbe is a place where the innate connections humans have with nature and all living things is celebrated through work and play. And we're here to tell the stories of those who have been inspired by this biophilic way of life in our community and across the country. This is Serenbe Stories. Design is a powerful tool in addressing climate change, but what is design? And what is a design museum? The Museum of Design Atlanta, otherwise known as MODA, defines design as a creative process that inspires change, transforms lives, and makes the world a better place. Today we talk with MODA Executive Director Laura Flusche and Exhibitions Manager Veronica Klucik about the role of museums in the 21st century. What if museums looked forward instead of backwards? What if they prioritized active engagement instead of passive observation? These are the questions that MODA sets out to answer by curating exhibitions that show how design can solve real-world problems. They had big plans in 2020 for the year of climate change. In this episode, we discuss how they successfully implemented virtual programming, including education for more than 3,000 kids worldwide. They are looking forward to 2021 and continuing to offer virtual access to their exhibitions, including 2 new ones that will be focused on regenerative design and alternative transportation. But first, Serenbe Stories is brought to you by The Inn at Serenbe. The Inn is nestled in the rolling countryside of bucolic Serenbe, where guests can walk on the 15 miles of trails through preserved forest land, the wildflower meadow, and the animal village. You can relax by the pool, hot tub, or in rocking chairs on the wraparound porch. Play on the croquet lawn, swings, and in-ground trampolines. Connect with nature and each other, all while staying in luxurious rooms on the Inn grounds or within the community of Serenbe. Book your stay today at serenbeinn.com. I want to welcome everybody back to Serenbe Stories today. Today we have special guests from an Atlanta stalwart, MODA, the Museum of Design Atlanta, which is in the heart of the city. And we have their executive director here, Laura Flusche, and we also have Veronica Klucik. So welcome you guys. I've also have Steve Nygren here with us as usual.
Hello, everyone.
And so we are in the middle of our season called Building a Biophilic Movement. And we thought having a conversation with you guys would be perfect. Since MODA, not only are you the only museum in the Southeast dedicated to the study of all things design, the current show is called Learning from Nature, the Future of Design. And it really is demonstrating how designers can find sustainable solutions to human challenges by emulating nature's patterns and strategies. Big idea. So tell me all about how you guys got here, how the show started, and how it's working with COVID.
Okay. So, at MODA, we kicked off 2020 with some really big plans, including a partnership with the Candida Fund, by which we were going to turn 2020 into the year of climate and change. We were to put up 3 exhibitions that position design as one of the most powerful tools we have for addressing climate change and mitigating the effects that we're already feeling. As well as we were planning to put on a lot of programming, both for children and adults, about climate change and the power of design to address what is, of course, one of the largest issues, or probably the largest issue, that we face. We were excited, found a lot of support from individuals and companies and foundations who wanted to be part of this. And on March the 3rd, we opened the first of the 3 exhibitions that were to be part of the year of climate and change. The one that we're here to talk about, which is Learning from Nature, the Future of Design, which looks at biomimicry as a design strategy. And then 10 days later, we closed the doors because of COVID-19. So it's been a journey for us. I can say a couple of things. One, we have pivoted a lot as an institution. So we were fortunate to have a team of educators who said to us on the last day we were open, look, we can get our education programs for kids online, they're going to need them because schools are going to be closed. So we focused a lot of attention when we closed on doing that and have taught over 3,000 kids to use design to solve real world problems since we closed in March, and it's still going strong.
That's amazing.
We then, and Veronica can talk more about this, we digitized the Learning from Nature exhibition because it's sitting in our galleries and no one can see it.
Yep.
So we used a Matterport camera to make a high resolution 3D scan of it and put it on the website. And one of the fascinating things about that is that more people have visited it virtually than probably would have visited it in person. So we're really encouraged by that.
Yeah. It's big. I mean, and I ran into you, I feel like I ran into you at the Candida building. But that
last December, maybe?
Yeah, last December. And, we were thrilled to be a partner in this along with, good friends Interface and obviously Candida. And it is a wild world. And I think MODA historically has done a ton of kids programming and adult programming, but that is interesting how you say that you've reached more people, you think. And I believe you had told me that you were even reaching like international because, people couldn't come. So talk a little bit about that for even some of the, webinars and workshops and lesson learns that you've been doing.
So we started, when we closed because of the public health crisis, we first put our kids' programs online and had huge reception, and then began to phase in some adult programming, including a series called Drink in Design, where we hand the mic to local designers and creatives to hear how they're making change in the world now, and an exhibition-based series called I Dissent that takes place in the context of another virtual exhibition we have called Design of Dissent, which is an exhibition of posters that take on human rights and social justice issues. So we have some talks there in the Design of Dissent exhibition. And recently we've started a series called Architecture and Urbanism for Justice that are a response to the social justice movement, an acknowledgement that over history we have designed a lot of injustice into our world, and that it's in our power to undesign that or redesign that. And we need to be talking and thinking about that. And one of the fascinating things that's happened is that we've begun to attract a global audience. So over the course of the past, say, 8 months, we've had people from almost every state participate in our programming, whether it's for kids or for adults. And we've had people from 42 countries tune in. And it's very common for us to have an event and have people from across the globe. And so that's been really fascinating to us, and a reminder that the idea that we hold very dear at MODA, that design can make the world a better place, is something that's shared by a lot of people, and that it maybe gives us a little bit of hope in the face of the many crises that 2020 has brought.
Definitely. Tell us a little bit about the history of MODA, because you really came on pretty much from the inception.
Well, actually, I didn't. So at MODA, we often say that we're 28 going on 8, and both of them are a lie now because we're actually more like 30 going on 10.
Okay.
But the reason we differentiate with these two ages is that we were founded about 30 years ago as a totally different institution called the Atlanta International Museum of Art and Design. And we were located downtown for 2 decades in the Marriott Marquis complex. The people that founded the museum were fortunate to get some space, including one of John Portman's old model shops in the Marriott Marquis complex. And they put on exhibitions there.
Amazing.
They did that a couple decades. I joined MODA 10 years ago.
Okay.
Well, really almost 11. Just at the moment that it was ready to move. So our board of directors decided a little over a decade ago that if MODA was to grow and to serve more people and better serve its community, it needed to be in a different place. And they were fortunate to be able to make a deal with Perkins and Will, the architecture firm, They purchased a building here in Midtown Atlanta and didn't quite know what they were going to do with the bottom floor, the street level floor of it, and invited MODA to take its place there. So we moved here in early 2011 and have been on a really steep growth pattern ever since, as people are exploring us and as we're learning more about what we want to do and what we want to contribute to the Atlanta arts and culture scene.
Mm-hmm. And I guess that's my folly, is that is when MODA sort of came into my world, is that time. And so that is where I sort of think of the sort of inception of it. But I do recall it being downtown, but again, I never went. It was in a much more accessible place, in the Perkins and Will building, which is across from the High. So tell me, I've watched you guys grown, and Serenbe has been lucky to have been in a couple, participated in a couple exhibitions, and Garney, Steve's daughter, was able to do a panel. Met some wonderful artists. I remember that night. And it's such a jewel for the market. But tell me, where have you been and where are you going? Obviously you've learned a lot this year, but in general, what do you guys want to be when you grow up?
That's a great question. Well, let me say this. One of the things that happened after we moved to our current location is that people began to come in the museum and ask a question which seemed very simple and turned out to be very complicated. And that question was, what is a design museum? And we discovered that everyone who tried to answer that question, whether they were a board member or a staff member or a volunteer or someone who just came in the door, had a different answer. And that the root of that was in the fact that we all defined design differently. Mm-hmm. So we did a lot of work about 8 years ago to create a definition of design that governs everything we do now. So we define design as a creative process that inspires change, that transforms lives, and that makes the world a better place. And I would say that over the past years, our job has been to grow into that definition and to explore it, to figure out what it means for exhibitions, what it means for programming, for education, for kids. Mm-hmm. And we're always investigating that. And we investigate that in a few ways. We have some kind of stock research questions that the board and I think about a lot. One of them is, what is the museum of the 21st century? Mm-hmm. So what role do museums and can museums play in a world that's changing quickly, particularly a small museum like ours? Mm-hmm. We also ask, what if a museum looked forward instead of backward? So if you think of what designers do in our world, designers are some of the people we charge with helping us navigate the now and the future. And so we as a design museum stand with designers. So instead of looking back and admiring what designers have done in the past, we do that sometimes. But mostly we look at what they're doing now. And in doing so, we also often take a stand, acknowledging that there are real challenges in the world, like climate change. Mm-hmm. And that design is a powerful tool for taking those on, but we have to acknowledge they exist. So we can't be neutral. We can't ignore them. We have to talk about real issues. So that's something else that we do. And then another question that we ask is, what if a museum prioritized active engagement over passive observation? What if we invited everyone who came in to engage with the design process in some way or another, whether it's a little bit of a change in the way they think, or maybe doing a design activity while they're here? What if we could help activate that creative piece of people's brain, not turning everyone into a designer, but helping them think just a little bit differently and understand the power of design to address challenges. So we spend a lot of time working on that with the hope that we're advocates for design, we're advocates for designers, and that maybe not everyone becomes a designer, but they think to call one or ask for one when they're up against a tough issue.
Yeah, no, I think that is so imperative. And I think about, where we live, right? And Steve at Serenbe, without the designers, without the architects, without the land planners, Steve, right? To pull these ideas out of your head, where would we be?
Exactly. No, I mean, that's designers make the world go round and pull it all together.
It's really quite amazing. So tell me, to bring Veronica into the conversation, Veronica, you were instrumental in putting together and curating this exhibition of learning from nature. I know you worked with the Biomimicry Institute, which I want to hear a little bit about that. You also worked with, was it Georgia Tech, for the Biologically Inspired Center for Design? Tell me a little bit about the collaborations and where you started and how you sort of put it together.
Yeah, so the exhibition kind of started with a lot of research and just like a lot of digging and reaching out to people, which was partly done by me and my co-curator, Malaysia Marshall. But a big part of it and a big help to the curation was this collaboration with the Biomimicry Institute. And the professor you're speaking of, her name is Jeanette Yin, and she is just like this phenomenal source of information of all things bio-inspired design and just all these great things that nature can do that normally we wouldn't even notice or be able to like conceive of. So just kind of talking to them about all these things that are out there and all these projects that are out there. And especially with the Biomimicry Institute, they do a design challenge each year. And so they played a huge role in helping us kind of, I guess, narrow our definition of biomimicry as a design process, as well as set up a lot of introductions to the student teams, especially that are doing a lot of forward-thinking projects around biomimicry and just that are kind of on their way to getting these products or these ideas and projects to become products that we are using in our day-to-day lives.
So let me ask, and I'll have you, for the listener, define biomimicry. Because it's not a word it's a word that we're comfortable with, but it's not a word that people hear very often. So tell me how you're defining it, and I'd also be curious how people are reacting to it.
Yeah, so I guess in the simplest terms, biomimicry could be defined as a design process that asks designers, engineers, and innovators to solve human solutions by turning to nature and emulating how nature solves some similar problems in the natural world. And it's a very interesting, when you start diving into it, it's a very interesting process in the way that it takes on the typical design process. But I think when most people hear it, as you're mentioning, we're very familiar with it, but to a lot of people, it's a very new design or a new concept. And so a lot of people are really interested and just kind of surprised that this exists and that people are doing it, and just also blown away by all of these amazing things that nature does.
It's fun to hear the stories because, of course, I think of Janine Baez, who's one of the original folks. And I had the privilege, of course, Ray Anderson would have his dream team, and Janine was part of that here at Serenbe. And I remember the day that she had sent everyone into the woods to look at the floor of the forest as they were thinking about designing the carpet. And I remember at lunch, everyone was saying, we just, we've done these wild things. We're out looking around, But that was actually the beginning of the carpet squares that had no pattern, that they could be put together in any way. And so there was a design challenge that Janine led everyone into to see how nature doesn't fit together perfectly. So that was fun to be at the right at the front seat to watch that happening.
I was going to say, I think that's kind of a big theme of biomimicry as well, is to just look closely and just take a time to pause and actually pay attention to nature and how it works and the things that it does and how it's been able to survive for billions of years.
What are a couple examples in the show that you are particularly taken with, or perhaps the visitors really particularly are drawn to?
That's a great question. There's so many.
Or some of your favorites, perhaps.
I think one of my favorites is this company called Biomason in North Carolina has found a way to grow concrete essentially by looking at how coral is able to grow passively and without any extra energy. And so they essentially have created this entire process that involves bacteria and some passive chemical reactions that is a bit too scientific for me to be able to repeat correctly, but it's able to essentially make these concrete structures without the need of a ton of energy or CO2 emissions, which the concrete industry is notoriously bad for.
Interesting. And so they're in have they implemented any residential or commercial projects?
I think that they are still in kind of a early process. I know that they've probably done a few test structures, but from what I understand, it's very difficult to have new building materials be approved. So they're still kind of in that process of being able to actually use it as a building material in residential and commercial projects. But I know they're definitely on their way.
Oh, that's so cool. I have fantasies of, we have our artist in residency program here. I have fantasies that we would, find people like that who are using really innovative building materials or really innovative sustainable building concepts and building new artist cottages with each of those tools would be just amazing, right? And have it be a demonstration so more builders would be comfortable with those products and those practices. So if anybody's listening and wants to fund it, we'll make it a Serenbe MODA project. That's a really cool example. What else, other ones? Do you have a favorite, Laura, in the show?
I do have a favorite, and it's maybe an unlikely favorite. There are some examples in the exhibition that are pretty well known, like the design of the bullet train in Japan being patterned on the kingfisher's beak and other bird traits, or the Velcro, the story of Velcro being invented by a guy who was hiking the Swiss Alps and discovered how cockaburs stuck in his dog's hair and was inspired to create a new fastener. The one that kind of blows my mind and I think about a lot comes out of Georgia Tech, where some professors or a professor and a graduate student at the time were really interested in bees. And the problem that they chose to take on was how servers, like the servers that power the information that comes to our computers, how they allocate space. So not every website is busy at the same time. A server might host a lot of websites. And so how does the server figure out how much space to allocate at any given time for different websites? Can it do more if it's not, always giving the same amount to a website? And so they began to think about what are parallels for that, and think about bees. And bees have to do a similar thing, in that bees have a kind of intelligence that allows them to figure out how many bees to send to a given flower patch on a given day, so that they don't exhaust it immediately, or they don't get all the bees there, and there's not enough work for the bees to do, and so on. So they began to study the way the bees allocate their work and use that to build an algorithm that allows the servers to allocate space for websites. And I don't know why that example really just makes me happy in my head, but it does. And I think one of the things that I find really inspiring with that example and the exhibition in general is something that sounds so obvious when you say it, but it's not. Designers often, when they're charged with the problem, look back to see what other humans have done with similar problems in the past. Mm-hmm. But the idea of looking to nature instead, it sounds so simple, but we don't do it all the time. Okay. So it really can change the paradigm.
Definitely. It is something that we, I think a lot of us don't take the time to pause, like you were saying, Veronica, and sort of spend time in nature. And I think, I guess for better, and although an unfortunate reason, with the pandemic, is people have taken the time to slow down or have been forced to slow down, are really seeking out nature and the outdoors and really understanding the benefits of, not only in our lives from a health perspective, but how they can be examples to us. And I think, this is sort of tying back a little bit to the year of climate and change. I too thought that 2020 would really be the year after all the fires last year. And obviously we have more this year, but everything that was going on, that this would really be the time that we would really start buckling down and looking to the next 20 years of how we can actually affect the change. Tell me a little bit about, what you've learned from this and sort of how you're going to take this into 2021, because obviously you weren't able to do everything you wanted to do. How does 2021 look?
Yeah, one of the things that we've learned is that there's huge interest. So even though the museum is closed right now, we're seeing people go to the virtual exhibition. We're getting emails about it. And we also built a biomimicry challenge that teachers can take into classrooms. And we're seeing a lot of interest in schools who are already taking on the topic and saying, wow, I can't believe you built this because we're studying this. This is so great. So that's been really rewarding.
Okay.
In terms of our year of climate and change, we've done a little magic with words. And we have turned it into the Climate and Change Project. Right. And so it's going to stretch right through 2021. And I can't imagine that MODA talked about climate before this. And we will keep talking about it afterwards. This is just a particularly intense series of conversations we're going to have. So we have 2 more exhibitions that will go up, and this will depend a little on when we reopen. So things are a bit in flux, so stay tuned. Mm-hmm. But the next exhibition will be called Bike. That's part of our Climate and Change Project. Will be called Bike to the Future. And fun. Yeah, we're excited. It looks at contemporary bike design.
Nice.
But it also looks at bike infrastructure and how it's growing and being designed around the globe.
Amazing.
And so we'd like to have some conversations. There's lots of great people doing this work in Atlanta already. We know that. But we'd like to, help MODA constituents access that information through this exhibition so that we can talk about alternative transportation forms in Atlanta, at least that one. And then there's a third exhibition that is called Full Circle Design Without End that will be about regenerative design. And so tentatively that's slated for next fall.
Nice.
It was curated by Janelle Miniter, who used to be our exhibitions manager. Now she's gone to school, back to grad school, which is a great thing to do in a pandemic, right?
Yeah.
But I suppose one jumping off point for that exhibition is, of course, the Candida Living Building on the Georgia Tech campus. Yeah. So, a living building, a regenerative building, and exploring how that works. But there are other projects happening in the Southeast and then around the globe. So we'll be thinking about how do we design architecture and systems and objects that don't just preserve the status quo and don't deplete the environment, but actually do good by their existence. So some very real things, and then some that are more conceptual and exploratory.
No, I love that. We've talked in the past about, sort of a circular economy, which I think is a really interesting concept. And I know a partner, both of ours and friend is Interface that really working towards that and does amazing work. But I do think this sort of regenerative word is sort of fascinating to me. We've talked about our friends at Rodale are really pushing regenerative agriculture, and we're actually having a conversation with them, because it takes into account the soil health and the human health of the people involved in farming. We know about regenerative design. I had a conversation with somebody earlier about regenerative travel, right? And the hospitality industry and how they can be more regenerative. do you see the sort of regenerative design and sort of the full circle, like the, really the circular economy? Do you see them hand in hand, or are they a little different? Like, tell me a little bit about, because regenerative is a little bit of a different take on it. It's not 100% putting it back into the system.
Yeah. Gosh, Monica.
You don't have to have the answer. This is more of a maybe
Veronica, you want to take that one?
No, but I just think it's an interesting concept to say.
Yeah.
People throw words around, and I don't mean that in any derogatory way. Like we all do, right? And I think to better understand as a listener or a visitor, what's the difference?
Right.
And how can I find companies that do those things, and understanding where they all fit together is, I guess, really my question that I'm asking. And maybe the show will help me learn next fall.
Well, I will say, and then I would love it if Veronica weighs in. I will say that the show is still in development. So the initial curation was done by Janelle Miniter, but we have now assembled, and for the first time just last week, an advisory committee of experts who are helping us finesse things like definitions and the projects that are in it to make sure, because this is not, we run a museum for a living. So we need that expertise. And I would say that's something that is still being hashed out. In that we just convened that group. But Veronica, what are your thoughts on that? Veronica's very heavily involved in the show now too, kind of passed the mantle to her on it. So
wonderful.
Yeah. So I guess my best way to answer that is that for me, regenerative design and just regenerative in general kind of requires a very holistic approach to everything. So I think it's really hard to separate like the regenerative economy or the circular economy from like regenerative design, from like closed systems and other things like that. So I think as far as like the exhibition and for people that are looking for regenerative design, it is just a very like holistic thing to look at. So kind of looking at all these different topics and considering like how our food, like how we grow it can be regenerative, but also how it's delivered to us and the waste products after that and everything. I think just like something that considers all of these aspects and how we like through them and through these processes we're impacting the environment is all just kind of what we're going to try to do with the exhibition. And also looking at things like, I guess, justice and equitable systems as well, and regenerative social systems, as well as things like Indigenous knowledge and the role that has and how we define regenerative knowledge and regenerative design and everything like that.
So that's good. I like the word consideration, that we're thoughtful when we do these things. Because I feel like regenerative really came into my vocabulary. And Steve, you may have been there a lot earlier than I was, just because you're always a visionary. But Rodale really brought it to my attention probably 3 or 4 years ago, as they were talking about, regenerative agriculture as a solution for carbon sequestration and beyond, just healthy food. That they really brought it home to me that if the soil's not healthy, forget it.
Nobody is.
Yeah. And so that, because you would hear organic and of course you want to try and buy organic or natural or local or, whatever the sort of you think is going to be closer to sort of real foods. But to think about, well, you could have organic food, but if it's not grown in healthy soil,
right,
it's just not going to have the vitamins and the efficacy and really do your body good. And so that was a real mind shift for me that I hadn't thought about. So I think that the show sounds really interesting to think about how that concept of inputs, affect a product. So do I want to jump back to Bike for the Future for a minute, because I'm really intrigued by that. Is that you're thinking spring or summer for that show?
We're thinking spring.
Okay. And I know obviously the Beltline is in Atlanta, the big thing and everything. But I know, Steve, you're working on a project with the river.
That's right, the Riverlands project, which I'm sure all this interconnects.
Mm-hmm. And that I'm assuming that is going to be connected via bike paths as well, Steve, correct?
Absolutely, it'll connect into the Beltline eventually.
Mm-hmm.
And the Silver Comet and come down along the river. And so.
But that might be a fun one to know about. And I know Ryan was consulting a little bit Gravel on that project initially.
We're actually in conversation with Scape, the landscape firm that is working there, and including that project in Full Circle. So, but a good point that it could be in Bike to the Future as well. So thank you.
Scape is amazing. What an incredible.
They are.
See, that
really
was
great.
a natural thing. So for the listeners, Scape was hired to do the Master Riverlands project, and that's 100 miles of the river corridor. That's a mile on each side of the river. So not just the river, which the river keepers have done a great job of cleaning the water so that we can all worry about it. But this is the valley, a mile on each side of it, running for 100 miles. So just imagine that's 200 square miles coming through the center of Atlanta. And a lot of the northern part has already been developed. So it's connecting through the paths. But the southern part, we can really do some innovative things for the future.
Mm-hmm. Tell me what virtual programming you have going on. Obviously, we can come to the website and we can see via Matterport the exhibition. But you guys have some amazing talks. I'm sure you have a couple more planned throughout the year. Tell us some highlights that we should be listening or looking for and signing up for.
I'm looking forward to one of our Drink and Design episodes that is happening on Tuesday, December 1st. Okay. So with Drink and Design, we invite designers and creatives to take the mic and tell us about their work. And we're talking to someone I have admired for such a long time and so much on December 1st. His name is Maurice Cherry. And Maurice is a graphic designer. Mm-hmm. Well, yes, he is. And a UX designer and a coder and a lot of other amazing things. But Maurice has made a giant contribution to the world over the past years in the creation of a podcast called Revision Path.
Okay.
In which he has interviewed, I'm going to say hundreds, I do think it's hundreds, of Black designers about their work and their experience and really amplifying their voices in a way that is very much needed because design is a field that needs to work on diversity and representation and opening career pathways up to everyone. And Maurice was really out there giving people a chance to tell their story and talk about their work. He's here in Atlanta and just an amazing human being. So I can't wait to see him on the MODA virtual stage.
Okay, good. I'm going to put that on my calendar. And how do we sign up? Do we need to be a member or is it paid? Tell me about how we engage.
Drink and Design is free. And so you just head over to the MODA website and sign up. We use a virtual platform you'll get a link for, and you'll just be able to log in, ask questions, and listen.
Wonderful. Okay, I'm very excited about that. Now, will you guys go a little quiet around the holidays in December, or do you continue on? Do you have kids camps? Like what else happens in December that we can share?
We'll go a little quieter with adult programs. We do have holiday camps over the Thanksgiving holidays and the winter holidays,
right,
for kids. And those are going up really right now.
Great.
Well, the Thanksgiving ones are up. So they're day-long camps. They're virtual, but kids learn a lot of design skills. And most often they learn them in conjunction with STEM skills. So taking on some new tools or getting better at some they already know while doing really fun stuff and tapping into their creative problem-solving capacity.
Yeah, I know my boys took a Minecraft camp.
Yeah, well, Minecraft is very interesting, and Veronica should talk about this too in just a second. But we use Minecraft as a design tool at MODA. It really is a CAD tool, and it's one of the best ways we have for teaching young designers how to think about sustainable environments, whether they're cities or we have a camp in which kids learn to build living buildings with Minecraft. So they're really out there being the next architects and urbanists and urban planners and everything else, but trying out all their skills in Minecraft. And Veronica's in fact working on a really interesting project in Minecraft with one of our educators.
Tell us.
So it's a project where we're kind of trying to see if we can bring exhibitions to Minecraft. And so essentially like working with a build team of kids who the educator that teaches Minecraft is very familiar with. And she is an excellent and a great teacher and like great at working with them in Minecraft. And so working with them to kind of find a way that they want to tell the story of things like regenerative design or living buildings, or I think at one point we've been talking about doing like bike infrastructure to support the bike exhibition. And so essentially what the world would look like is they become these little saves that people who have Minecraft can download and just kind of run around and explore and learn about all these different concepts and ideas as if they're in this like 3D Minecraft world.
That's so cool. Now, does MODA have their own Minecraft server?
We do. Yes. Of course we do.
I've learned more than I need to know about Minecraft. That's very exciting.
We did another really interesting project that your audience might like, which is last spring, late last spring, I think. Mm-hmm. We partnered with Midtown Alliance because they were working on figuring out what 2 green spaces in Midtown might become. Mm-hmm. One was small and one is much bigger, but we brought together a team of about 20 young designers, by which I mean between about 8 and 16 years old. Mm-hmm. And they built those spaces in Minecraft and then adapted them to be really friendly urban green spaces, and got the opportunity to share all of their ideas with the people at Midtown Alliance who loved them. And so we're talking to Midtown Alliance about doing some more projects like that too, because they love hearing what young people have to offer in terms of how a city can meet the needs of the people who live there.
Definitely. I absolutely love that. Well, the last thing I want to ask is I want to make sure that everybody knows how to get involved, like how to become a member, what are the benefits, and so if you can share that with our audience, that would be great.
Sure. So the MODA family is made up of people who believe in the power of change to make a difference. We call them change makers. And so we invite everybody to become a MODA change maker by becoming a MODA member. Donors are great as well, but members are also donors. And you can become a member on the MODA website. When we are open, you come in for free when you're a member, and you get a discount in our store. But even now, there are lots of perks to being members. There are classes that are free for members that we charge other people for. So you get some discounts, and you get a lot of special communications from us, just letting you know what's happening in the museum and around the museum, so that you're in the know and have the first opportunity to get involved.
You know, you have a lot of great programming now on your webpage. Now, what do you charge for, and what is free access?
Almost everything is free now, Steve. So with the exception of longer camps for children, but almost everything at this point is free. And one of the reasons for that is we know that this is a difficult time for a lot of people. So we're doing everything we can to open the doors and invite people to get involved, be part of the community, and participate.
And so without that revenue stream coming in, how are you holding on?
It's 2020 has been a pretty rough for arts and culture institutions in general. We were fortunate to have a very successful summer camp program. So summer camps were paid for us, and we managed to pivot our camps to be virtual camps, and we sold twice as many camps this year as we have any other year, with people from across the United States participating in them. So big kudos to our educators who did an amazing job on that. That helped us a lot. it's also through the generosity of lots of foundations and corporations and individuals who see the value in what MODA does and want to make sure that we can keep doing it, or are enthusiastic about design and want it to be out there front and center. So we are always grateful to anyone who's able to make a contribution to help us keep doing this work.
That's great. I think it's interesting, the people that you're reaching that would never have set foot through the front doors, both locally and nationally and internationally. And I think this is happening with other museums. Do you think this is going to change a trend on how museums share their exhibits and their programming and what they believe in?
I think it will for us. I think one distinction that we have to be clear about is that MODA is not a traditional museum. And one thing that makes us very different is that we don't have a permanent collection. So that gives us an agility that maybe some museums might struggle a little bit with. But I do think so. I think everyone will change, Steve. I think the degree to which everyone changes is up for grabs, but I think everyone will change. And I think that, I said earlier, one of the questions we ask about MODA is, what is the museum of the 21st century? And what's become really clear to us is that the museum of the 21st century is able to deliver content electronically as well as in person, and do so in a way that attracts a global audience. So it's been exciting, and it's given us really a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm. It's similar, but I go to Denver, I travel around, and it's amazing the Braves fans that are all over the nation. Mm-hmm. And why is this? Because Ted Turner was sharing the Braves games, and everyone could watch the game, even in their small towns or wherever they were, if they didn't have it. And so we have Braves fans just scattered all over the country that never lived in Atlanta.
Interesting.
And I think that's a great model we think of as we expose who we are at the various museums.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think Atlanta is very, very lucky to have you guys. It really is something that everybody should check out. And when they can go back in person, it is a jewel of a museum. And you guys do incredible world-class exhibitions. So congratulations on making it through a great year. This show is amazing. So I encourage everybody to go check it out, and then become a member. Become a member, because you guys are doing, I love it. You're looking to the future.
Thanks so much. And thanks for everything you guys do at Serenbe. You're also an amazing entity.
If we all shine our light, it's going to light the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, great exhibit. I'm glad that I got there for those first days.
Yeah, I think you were at the opening.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank you so much, you guys.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Serenbe Stories. New episodes are available on Mondays. Please rate and review the podcast and visit our website to learn more about upcoming guests, episodes, and everything biophilia at serenbestories.com.